Rafi? Okay, so the microphone is working. I am absolutely delighted to be here today with such an incredible panel to kick off this discussion. I think we all see that we have some of the biggest advocates, if not the biggest advocates, in Africa for women's equality and really, talking about but also doing what needs to be done in order to provide women with equal access on so many different levels, and from government, from multilaterals, and also from business. And I think the goal here is just to get a few of their thoughts to kick off discussions that will take 3 days, that will be not just technical, but technical as well as bringing in the voice of business and others to really roll up our sleeves and make a real difference and walk out of here in the next 3 days knowing that we are going to move even faster and, as President Adesina says, accelerate the move towards gender equality. So I would like to start with you, Your Excellency President Kagame, if that would be okay. We've all seen the incredible things that are happening here, and we just heard from you how important you also see gender equality as a huge driver for development. And so, obviously 50% of the cabinet are women, 50% of court judges, Supreme Court judges are women, more than 60% of parliament in Rwanda are made up of women. That's incredible. So given how much you've achieved, what are your plans for the next stage, ensuring sustainable gender equality in your country and really driving forward with that effort?
Well, once again, let me mention how happy we are. I am to have the President of Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, President of the African Development Bank, Chair of the African Union Commission, different partners here present, Excellencies. We got it from the beginning that there is a lot of work to do in terms of narrowing the gender gaps that exist. So from the outset, indeed, we made investments in terms of making sure that women are a central part of our population and the growth of the country in every regard and development of the country. So we have achieved a few things. Good progress has been made, whether it is women and their health, in education, in business, entrepreneurship, but there is still a lot of work to do. As we know, we are not yet where we need to be. And in fact, when you look at the studies that have been done by, for example, the World Economic Forum, and they show that gender parity has not been achieved by any country in our world. So we still have to do more. Much as in some aspects we are ahead, we are on ahead where many people are not doing so well. So we need to, again, go back to business and work together to make sure that. But the other thing that is very important for us in terms of the progress we have made and in which women have been very active, it's about change of mindset, to understand and look at things differently in a way that matters. So the change of mindset has elevated women to the level where they need to be, and they are there by their own efforts, as well as the country altogether making this effort together, men and women, and that's the difference that there has been. So what we intend to do, therefore, is to do more of what we have been doing and making sure that narrowing this gender gap is everybody's responsibility. It's not just women's responsibility, it is theirs as well, but it is even men's responsibility. And we have to make sure that this mindset, this new type of thinking is well entrenched, and just keep doing more of what we know has worked for us, whether it is women. Again, I'll give you an example. In our history here, even going by the colonial laws and so on, women were not supposed to inherit anything from their families. In other words, they are not supposed to own assets, but we have changed that. In fact, women have participated in changing that, even through changing laws. And as we have been told, they dominate the parliament. So sometimes when issues have come up and they are complaining about this, we tell them, go and change it. Through you have the power in parliament where laws are made, so go ahead and do it. And all we do is to support them and support each other and make sure that there is continued change. So good progress, more work to do, and we are aware that we have to work together to continue making the change that we want to see happen.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And I'm not sure if this is working. Yes, now it's working, I think. Thank you very much for that. And it's true, it's amazing what's happening here, and truly that will change the mindsets. And then it does provide such an important example for other countries to follow. So talking about other countries, Your Excellency, Madam President, I'm very happy to say, if I could turn to you now and talk to you a bit about the Ethiopian experience and drawing on your career. We see a lot is being done at the cabinet and other areas to try to make a difference at the political level in Ethiopia. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there, and also what are the plans going forward? What has your experience been as the first female president coming into Ethiopia and seeing the changes that are taking place?
Thank you very much. Let me start by expressing the great pleasure that I have to be here today with you in Kigali, the heart of Africa. This summit could not be held somewhere else than Kigali, the Gender Summit. Thank you, President Kagame, for the invitation, and President Adesina. Let me start by just sharing with you a conversation I had with the president of the African Development Bank when I got the invitation, and there were conflicting events. So I called and said, what do you think about it? And he gave me another question, saying, okay, very good. Who else do you want me to invite as a president in Africa? It shows how rare we are. So, I mean, I didn't have to think twice. That's where we have to be if we can have our humble contribution to this conversation. So I'm really happy to be here. Yes, 2018 has been a very momentous year in Ethiopia. We have also 50% of our cabinet who are women, and other women in high positions, and of course including mine. This has been the result of overall transformation that my country is going through since a year and a half, and which has brought women to the fore. It has helped to see a new way of having leaders, viewing new leaders as well. In the cabinet, we have also been able to see for the first time female ministers overseeing ministries such as defense, national security, and so on. So I think we can say it was a very good momentum for Ethiopia, Ethiopian women, and for African women. Having said that, I want to immediately jump to the fact that the work has just started, but not finished. There is this perception and, in fact, views that are expressed that since you have all these positions, then what else do you want? What has happened in Ethiopia is the miracle of what a political will could lead you to. But the work has just started. I mean, if it was appointing female representatives to higher positions, then I think we could have done it long ago. But there is this gap that we have to fill. We have to have women filling, those middle-level leadership positions as well, and women grow along the ladder, competing with other male. So we need to have educated, skilled women that could replace those who have been pioneers in that regard. So the challenge is that we really need to work towards that and explain, change the mindset, as has been said, to allow women to come in. The other positive thing, I think, of having women is that, well, we can show that we can deliver, but we can also deliver differently. There is no template to follow where we are, even in this position, be told, oh, no, this is how presidents act and this is how things are done. I said, okay, if I can get where I want to get in a different way, so why don't I try it? This is the beauty of having different ways of looking at things and moving forward. So in Ethiopia, there is a door of opportunity that has been opened. It's the onus is on us to maintain that door open because, mind you, it can be closed. We can't regress. So we have to sustain this great progress that have been registered in Ethiopia in only a year and a half. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And it is incredibly inspiring. And again, yes, we've just gotten started, but what a great start. So now I would like to turn to you, Your Excellency, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, because we know what a priority this is for the African Union, and particularly within your Agenda 2063. And there's a lot of discussion, I think, among you and your colleagues about how violence and discrimination against women really does hold the continent back, and that it is a very important factor to address in driving much more quickly ahead with Agenda 2063, the SDGs, and so on and so forth. So what I would love to hear from you is a little bit more about how you're working with African leaders to really make a difference in this area, and what are some of your plans for encouraging gender equality in Africa.
Merci. Permettez-moi d'abord de remercier le président Kagame et le président Adesina de nous avoir associés à cet important sommet sur le genre. Je suis heureux également d'être parmi des leaders africains, celui du Rwanda et la présidente de l'Éthiopie, pays dans lesquels il y a une égalité pure et parfaite entre les membres du gouvernement. Vous allez me dire que l'Union africaine a 55 membres. Il n'y a que 2 dans lesquels cette parité a été atteinte. C'est très peu. Alors que dans l'agenda 2063, et bien avant, même dans l'acte constitutif de l'Union africaine, l'égalité des genres est inscrite en lettres d'or. Donc, cette discrimination, elle est politique, elle est économique, elle est sociale. Elle est politiquement incorrecte, économiquement insensée et socialement injustifiable. Parce que la moitié, ce moitié du ciel, qui est constituée par les femmes, je dirais même un peu plus de la moitié, parce que statistiquement parlant, les femmes sont plus nombreuses que les hommes dans notre continent. ne pas tenir suffisamment compte de ce potentiel est un véritable gâchis. Qu'est-ce que nous faisons avec nos États membres? L'agenda 2063, qui est notre bréviaire, dans son objectif 6, dit expressément que nous devrions compter sur les potentialités humaines et notamment sur les femmes en Afrique pour pouvoir réaliser cet agenda. J'ai beaucoup aimé l'arithmétique faite par le président Adesina. L'arithmétique, surtout l'addition faite par un banquier, est quelque chose de très, très important. Parce que généralement, ils aiment la soustraction. Surtout quand il s'agit d'étudier les dossiers bancables présentés par les femmes. Elles n'ont pas suffisamment de garanties. Qu'est-ce qui nous assure qu'elles vont payer? C'est bien que cela soit dit et par la voie la plus importante sur le plan bancaire. Je crois que c'est un très bon signe. C'est que nous disons à nos chefs d'État. Et je suis heureux de constater que de plus en plus, la situation s'améliore. Et qu'il faut, sans gêne, et prendre son courage à deux mains, parce qu'il s'agit de l'intérêt des États eux-mêmes, pour pouvoir franchir des pas significatifs dans le changement dans ce continent. J'ai souvenance quand j'avais 10 ans, je suis de l'Est du Tchad, où les gens ont l'habitude d'émigrer vers la Libye pour travailler. J'avais un oncle qui partait en Libye, je l'ai accompagné à la gare. Son épouse était avec lui, elle avait un enfant, un bébé. Et quand on lui faisait les adieux, elle est montée. Quand il est monté dans la voiture, elle est montée, c'est une voiture, un berlier ouvert, pour lui dire, écoute, fais attention à l'épargne, ne sois pas dépensier, ne t'en fais pas pour ici. Et le bétail, y compris ton cheval, tes vaches, tes chameaux sont dans de bonnes mains, je m'en occupe. Tes enfants, je m'en occupe. Fais tout pour épargner et ramener de l'argent. Imaginez, ça m'est resté. Le leadership montré par cette femme, la responsabilité qu'elle assume toute seule, alors que son mari partait pour 2-3 ans dans un pays étranger. C'est ça la résilience des femmes africaines. C'est ça la résilience des femmes africaines. Donc cette discrimination est injustifiable. La violence, ça c'est un autre problème, un autre phénomène. Violenter les femmes et les filles est tout simplement indécent. Rien ne le justifie. Aucune tradition, aucune religion, le bon sens ne peuvent justifier qu'on lève la main sur la femme. C'est injustifiable, absolument injustifiable. Alors, ce que j'ai dit aux uns, aux autres et surtout aux chefs d'État, profitez de cette potentialité et faites en sorte que cette éclosion puisse se permettre. Je suis certain que l'Afrique va changer et nous atteindrons l'Afrique que nous voulons. Je vous remercie.
Excellent. Merci beaucoup, Votre Excellence, et on espère qu'il y aura de plus en plus de chefs EFFE d'État dans le futur qui peuvent quand même suivre ces exemples. Très bien. OK. Dr. Adesina, Mr. President, boss, I'd love to turn to you now. And I know that you already talked a bit about this previously, but I mean, the numbers really are astounding. If you look at the loss in wealth from holding women back, by some estimates, it's something like $160 trillion, which is about double global GDP. So it's clear that there are gains to be made here by allowing the two wings to function, so to speak. So can you tell us, you started a bit, but can you get a bit more into detail with us about what the bank is doing in this area and your sort of vision going forward of how we can ensure that Africa is really benefiting from all the talent that is at its disposal?
Thanks very much. First, let me thank the two presidents for what they said and also for the chairperson of the African Union Commission. There's a lot of lessons there. First for me, before I come to the question, is the importance of realizing that progress has been made, right? But then what they both said was the importance of humility even as though that progress has been made. And also the power of mindsets, as President Kagame said. We need to constantly change mindset. It's just exactly what the Chair of the African Union Commission just said. So I think we should keep those things in mind so that we keep it in perspective. Now, for us at the African Development Bank, and we decided about almost 3 years ago that we have to stop talking about inframarginal things when it comes to women. We have to do things that are transformative when it comes to women. And so when we launched the Power, which is the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, which I said in my opening statement, which is to mobilize $3 billion for women businesses in Africa. That's a big thing for us. That's the biggest we've ever had on the continent. But let me tell you why I did that, why I pushed for that. Because that's most important on mindset. 1992, I took a flight from Lagos to Abidjan. It was in those days Air Afrique. And so I had a computer with me. It was this compact computer. It was one of those things you pick like this. It's like a suitcase. And that's all I had. And I entered the plane, and there are all these market women on the plane. And they had baskets on their head, they had clothes, they have everything. And just bear with me to land so you don't judge what I'm saying. They all were very fat. And I couldn't find any place to put my luggage, my computer. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, I realized they started taking out the tapes. They had taped the bales of clothing around themselves because the customs people were cheating them so that they were overtaxing them. And all of a sudden, they were all nice and slim, and everything was fine. And then the hostess came to me and said, "What can I do to help you?" I said, "I'm just looking for a place to put my computer." And she turns to me and said, "How many times do you fly this plane?" I said, "It depends on where my work takes me." He said, "These women may look like illiterates to you, but they fly this plane twice a day to go and to come back. This plane belongs to them. So please make more room for the women, and we'll put your computer in the hole downstairs." Now, then I realized, as President of the African Union Commission said, that actually women run Africa. They run it. And so when I became president, I said, I can't think of anything more important than making sure that those women have access to finance at scale. And that's why, and it's under your vice presidency, it's under you, and that's what we're doing. And we're going to talk about that maybe in the next panel. The next thing I want to say that we are doing, it's in the area of agriculture. Agriculture, women account for 75% of farmers on the continent. But 1% of land belongs to them. Rwanda is an example. It's making Ethiopia, also Ghana and other countries, and Kenya are making good examples on that. 5% of extension goes to them, 10% of finance. It's not smart. I had a PhD student in 1992 who did his PhD thesis under me. And I remember he did a study in northern Nigeria to go and look at the impact of soybeans on women. Soybean was grown at that time by women, so men didn't care about it. But once it became a cash crop, the men went for it. And I remember the thesis very well. He found, the woman said, she was making so much money from soybeans. She said, "Look, the clothing that I'm wearing is from soybean. My kids go to school from soybeans. They are well fed from soybean. The house that you see, I built with the iron roof on it from soybeans." He said, "Soybean is my husband. What else does one need in a husband?" So that tells you the power of when you get land in the hands of women. It can transform things. That's why at the African Development Bank, we are doing quite a lot on agriculture. We're spending $25 billion over 10 years and making sure all we do in agriculture is directed towards empowering these women. The third and final one I want to say is about fashion, fashionomics. You know, you saw the Minister of Gender of Rwanda elegantly walk down as she came, you know, African fashion is fantastic. And globally, it's a $5 trillion market in 10 years. In Africa alone, $31 billion. But it's done lately by women. And so we want to make sure at the bank we have something called fashionomics, which is to make sure that we are supporting these women that are doing the tissue, the couture, and all these things. And it's very, very important for us to continue to do that because you are going to impact a lot. Here in Rwanda, the government of Rwanda has a great program. So I think you call it, is it pink orange or something that you have on textile. It's a company with Chinese company that is working here doing textile. Rwanda has that. Ethiopia, Prime Minister Desalegn, I think you had on your special zone that you are also doing textile, footwear, and all of those things. Now, these are very, very important things that we must really continue because fashion is a big thing. African fashion is on global scale, and women are the ones who run it. So we want to make sure at the bank that we provide them access to skills, to knowledge, to finance, to be able to be competitive globally on this. The last thing I want to say is about the issue of a program that you actually launched, which I like, is called 50 Million Women Speak. You know, you can have, women, they're not so well organized. So access to information, access to mentoring, access to markets, access to finance and all these things. So what we've decided to do is working with the regional economic communities. We set up these 50 million women speak. So the women are connected, they are networked, with each other. And that will make sure that, individually, they may not be strong. When you got 50 million women that are talking to each other, exchanging ideas, creating markets, creating opportunities, and lobbying for change, I think you will see a big change. So that's some of the things that we are doing. And as I said in my remarks, I think the best investment we can make as a bank is to invest in women.
Thank you very much. And I'm quite excited to say that actually the 50 Million African Women Speak is being launched right here. And it will be going live while we're here. So keep your eyes open. And also we're going to be doing a lot on fashionomics and AFAWA and everything. So very excited. And I think, Paula, that's a beautiful segue to what you've been working on. You've launched the Alethea Fund, of which we were one of the anchor investors, probably the main anchor investor. And we've been delighted to follow what you've been doing. But I think just in general, you can talk about Alethea if you'd like, but also in general, your experience as a woman working in the financial sector, which is very male-dominated and can be quite challenging. So it would be really wonderful to have an experience or have an explanation and discussion point a little bit about how you address these things, and also for the heads of state and government ministers to hear a little bit about what life is really like on the ground.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state. Please allow me to say all protocol observed. In my country, we say that when we are lazy to, to read out the whole list of important people. My name is Polo Ledika. I am the second half of a fund called Alethea Fund that was anchored by the African Development Bank. We're very thankful, Dr. Adeshina, for the catalytic role that the bank has played, played right at the beginning, but importantly, the supportive role that your team has really played, and I will tell you a little bit more about it. So in terms of my journey, I used to work for the South African government. I was actually responsible for the policy that many may know as the broad-based Black economic empowerment. So I drove that whole process of seeking to transform the racial makeup of South Africa's economy. You know our history. I will not bore you with the details. So we had to be clearly very deliberate in ensuring that there's transformation racially, but importantly, and I suppose because the policy formulation work was led by a woman, we also made sure that women were at the center of that policy. I'm giving you that background because I think it is important to acknowledge the importance of political will and leadership when it comes to issues of transformation. You have to be very deliberate about it. You have to create, your regulatory environment and framework that enables you to achieve the objectives of transformation, I think, broadly. So when I finished that body of work with the government of South Africa, I had already identified an opportunity in the market that the legislation was actually opening up opportunities for entrepreneurs broadly, black entrepreneurs broadly, but women in particular. We often talk about how sophisticated the financial services system is in South Africa, but the reality is that it's actually not responsive to your typical African or black South African. So for me, there was an opportunity to actually establish a business at the time to facilitate access to capital for black entrepreneurs and women in particular. This is in 2008. So on the one hand, I had the benefit of a legislative environment that was supportive to what we were trying to do, but I think on the other hand, I was faced with a very hostile sector that is male-dominated, that is white-dominated, that is not used to engaging with a woman, that does not understand this opportunity that she sees, that requires to be educated and be convinced. So that is the typical experience, I think, of many women entrepreneurs, where you walk into a room, people don't really think that you've got a really commercially viable opportunity to talk about. I have found that the market, for instance, assumes that women run micro businesses that are slow-growing businesses. And I think President Adesina has just given you an example of how women are actually running the world. Girls rule the world. That is the reality. And so convincing your traditional investors, your traditional LPs, that there are decent-sized and high-growth businesses that are run by women at the time in South Africa, and of course later on when the African Development Bank invited us to have a conversation about broadening finance to women across the continent. We also found that having that conversation with international investors now going beyond Africa, I mean, Tokumbo and I spent about 3 months in Seattle in 2016. Just to give you an idea, we started this conversation in 2014. The FDB convened a meeting in Nairobi in 2014. I remember the exact date, 28 April 2014. And it took us 5.5 years to convince the rest of the world that women as an asset class are worth investing in. We had to change the language that we spoke about. I mean, when we started, we used to say we wanted to raise a fund that invests in women-owned and led businesses. And, your investor base would say, also, are you impact investors? And we said, well, if you want to call us that, that's what we will answer to that too. And over time, we found that we needed to change the language so that we could make our male counterparts on the other side of the table be comfortable with what it is that we were saying. We had to develop what we now call a gender lens investing tool, which we were hoping to launch fairly soon, which also tries to put in a language that, again, the world is used to, for them to understand exactly what it is, the value proposition is that we're trying to put on the table. So I'm just demonstrating to you how much education, how much advocacy has also had to go into us convincing the world that investing in women actually makes commercial sense, despite the fact that many studies have actually proven that there's alpha. In fact, there's even better alpha in investing in women than when you just invest in men-owned businesses. But it also I found that it's very useful to have a sponsor. Dr. Kagame, you spoke about the issue of including women, not just being a women issue, but actually being a male problem. We found that having sponsors, again in the form of the AFDB, where they would literally go to meetings with us. So Tukumbe and I would be the girls, and then there would be a guy from the AFDB. And for some reason, that somehow brought us some currency that we didn't have when we walked into the room on our own. So although it is not ideal, but I think to the extent that you've got men in power, in positions of power and influence, who can actually stand up with us and for us and help us to tell the story and open the doors, for me, I think we should never shy away from that. It's not a sign of weakness on our part. I think it's just a sign of where the world is and the fact that we need to walk this path together until we change the mindsets that we spoke about. So Mine as an entrepreneur has been that kind of journey and we've been able to open a lot of doors, I think with a lot of support, but I think what I've also found, and I think it is important for every entrepreneur, whether male or female, to know is I have found that when you're authentic, when you are a subject matter expert in whatever it is that you're selling as a product, or if you're very clear about the problem statement or the problem that you are trying to solve, and you're also very clear about how you're going to solve that problem, you very quickly break down the barriers that you face, because we continue to face barriers. But I think when you're authentic and you sound like you know what you're talking about, people are willing to take the chance and are willing to actually back you and invest in you. So the AIF for me is a continuation of this journey. I'm very excited because one of the most significant things that it now allows us to do is to actually bring to life this inter-regional trade agreement that we've signed as most of the continent, because we keep talking about the need for inter-regional trade, but we hardly ever see anything happening on the ground. So Tukumba and I are very clear that the one thing that we're going to pursue very, very aggressively is the opportunity to make linkages or find linkages between businesses within the SADC region and businesses within the West African region. So very thankful for that opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you for mentioning the Africa Investment Forum, which indeed is all about changing the way that we look at things from sort of an aid mindset to an investment mindset, which is the way we know we need to go. Now, I'm mindful of the fact that we don't have much more time, but this is such an excellent panel. I would love to still get at least one last thought from each of you, even briefly. And just segueing from what we just heard from Polo, Madam President, I would love to turn to you again and just ask you, what advice would you have for young women in the room who are thinking about pursuing leadership, which might seem very daunting, but what advice would you have for them if this is something that they are interested in?
Okay, thank you very much. My first point would be to let them know that there is no Africa we want, there is no progress on this continent if they are not included. Now is the time, they have to seize it. This is the call that I will like to make. I would like also to tell them that they have to believe in them, they have to believe in what they can do. There is a lot of mystification. We have to go outside those. The path to leadership is about learning, is about growing. The path to leadership is also paved with many mistakes. You tumble, you fall, but you rise. You learn. You apologize, but you move on. We cannot stop. Let me tell you, as women, we put the threshold very high, and we want to be 100% perfect. We have to face the risk. We can't. And others didn't get 100% as well. So we have to be really ready for those challenges. We need to be focused. We have to know really what we really want. But it's also very important, beyond believing in our capabilities, by the way, young women nowadays have more capacities than the current one that they have. Let me tell you what has happened to me, my own experience. I have worked in my national capacity as well as 1 decade with high positions in the multilateral system. So whenever I was proposed a post, the first reaction was, who, me? Like, would I be able to do it? We have to take that away. You can do it. I have asked those questions, but I managed. I think I have. So we have to go beyond that. There is no restricted area for women nowadays. We can work anywhere in what could contribute to the society. But above all, really women will have to contribute to the fact that we have now, it's the time to move from rhetorics to action, from words to deeds. It's not only in big rooms, conference halls. We have to go to the grassroots. That's where things happen. We have to have that humility as well, to see all along the ladder. and bring them up. We talked about fashion. I mean, this weekend, I went to visit some amazing Ethiopian designers. We were in an incubator. It's amazing the potential that we have and what we can take from our own assets. I mean, there is so much collective wisdom on this continent that women can bring forward. So the time is yours. Don't waste it. I think we will have to work, all of us, together. But let me conclude by saying women working together, it's a formidable force to be reckoned with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now that is extremely powerful, and I will just repeat that for the young women in the room. Dare to be not perfect, because that's what it takes when you're moving forward. Mr. Chairperson, Your Excellency, just turning to you very briefly to get a sense from you how you think that working together between the African Union Commission and the African Development Bank, we can really move the needle on improving gender equality.
Je voudrais rappeler que la Banque africaine de développement est chargée de la mobilisation des investissements pour la mise en œuvre de l'agenda 2063. Et à ce titre, donc, cette initiative AFAWA est la bienvenue. Nous avons lancé nous-mêmes, au niveau de la Commission moi-même, une initiative appelée 1 million d'ici 2021, à travers l'éducation, l'emploi, l'entrepreneuriat et l'engagement, au moins et essentiellement des jeunes filles, leur donner la possibilité de se promouvoir. Nous avons actuellement dans les statistiques à peu près 40% des femmes au sein de l'administration de l'Union africaine. Les chefs d'État ont décidé que l'on doit arriver à une égalité de 50-50 en 2025. Pour l'instant, la Commission elle-même est paritaire et donc il faut que l'ensemble du personnel au niveau de la Commission également atteigne l'objectif qui est de 50-50%. Nous sommes à la fin de la décennie de la femme, 2010-2020. Et personnellement, je suis en train de plaider, je vais continuer à plaider au niveau du leadership africain pour que la décennie 2021-2031 soit celle de la décennie de la mobilisation financière, de l'intégration financière de la femme. Je crois qu'avec ces éléments, nous pouvons conforter les acquis et pouvoir sincèrement, en fait, c'est normaliser une situation qui était par nature anormale. Merci.
Thank you. And we will work together, and we will do great things. Of that, I'm convinced. And actually, my teams were just with your teams recently, and we have great plans. So Polo, turning to you, and we've heard from the President of Ethiopia some of her sort of words of wisdom to the women in the audience who are thinking about leadership. Turning to you and your experience in the private sector, what would be your words of wisdom to young women who really want to break into this area and make a difference, particularly in whether it's finance or business? What would you tell them?
I think very much in line with some of the words of the President of Ethiopia, you need to start. I think entrepreneurs and women in particular tend to want to spend too much time trying to perfect, and you never get around to starting. And I always say that the market is the best giver of feedback. So when you start, the market will immediately tell you whether you're onto something good or whether you should change it as quickly as possible. And I think the earlier you can pivot your business idea, the better it is for you, because you don't waste too much time and you don't lose too much money in the process.
Great. Thank you very much. Now, turning to you again, Mr. President, boss. You've talked a lot about how a bird needs to fly with two wings. You've mentioned it again today. We've heard from some of the very impressive women on the panel what the recommendation would be for women who want to take up positions. What would you tell men that they need to do in order to make this happen?
Thanks, Jennifer. I think the first thing is I think men have to realize that the current problem was not created by women. We created the problems. So we have a greater responsibility, as President Kagame was saying, to make sure that men in positions of leadership help to readdress long-term injustices and inequalities that have actually been perpetrated down for so long. And so when you take a look for me, I think the importance of mentorship, the importance of support, and importance of promoting women, it's very, very important. Now, in trying to do that, like in the, I remember, in the U.S. elections, the last time, Hillary Clinton was talking about the issue of the glass ceiling. I think the glass ceiling is an easy thing, in the sense that you can still see from there, because it's glass. In the case of Africa, it's not a glass ceiling. It's a concrete cement. You can't. So it requires a bulldozer to bulldoze right through that. And so I think that the example we have, excellent example. President Kagame is an excellent example of that. He just explained to you what he had to do. Right? I think he's too modest for his achievement. That's just because of who he is. Right? I think you should give him a clap, because it's. And I think that this is what it takes, leadership that redresses long-time injustices and inequalities. The other thing I want to say is President of the African Union Commission said it, and also the Minister of Gender from Rwanda mentioned it. It's the issue that we have to do everything to end gender-based violence, rape, gender harassment, and all these things that go on. It's not because we don't have it on the law books. We have them. But the police have to do their jobs. The courts have to do their jobs. There has to be high penalties for these things that, as you said, abnormal things that we are trying to normalize in some situations. I also think that for girls, we have to make the homes safe. We have to make the schools safe. We have to make the streets safe, yes, the work environment safe, so that they can actually thrive in those environments. And I just give one thing about our programmatic intervention. Just a small thing like providing safe toilets in school. We invested in Malawi, Madam President. We had a project there with our partners. We put about $23 million just to provide toilets in school. And what we found, toilet and water and sanitation, was that girls were dropping out of school just because there are no safe toilets for them to use. And when it was time for their periods, they go in school, everybody making fun of them because there's nowhere to go. And it affects, as you were saying, their psyche, the confidence and everything. So we invested $23 million there. You know what we found, Mr. President, was that the enrollment in school went up by 29% for the girls, 29%. We also found that diseases in terms of water-borne diseases fell from 36% to 5% just from that. So I think that these are very practical things that we must do to own that. But I will end with one thing, that we are here talking about the imbalance, men, women largely. But I perceive that unless we change something, we'll be here in another 15, 20 years talking about how to change another imbalance for boys. You go to schools today, universities, and you look at their graduation. First-class honors, when they ask them to come, they're all girls. You should clap for that. That's good. I went to a university in Nigeria. I was there for the graduation ceremony. And they say first-class honors about 7 times. All the people that came were all ladies. Then we were all filling all the best prizes, about 15 of them were taken by ladies. So we were all sitting there, really bemoaning, just find us one boy, one guy. It's not. So finally one guy gets up, and the whole place went up, and we were all excited. And the guy came in, they asked him to get the prize and then go over and say thank you. And he said, well, you know, it is actually was won by my girl, but she fell ill, so that's why I'm here. So I think that we need to really make sure that we don't enter this. Our girls have a lot to teach our boys so that, you know, we don't come back in 50 years and we find that it's the reverse. So I think a lot will also learn from the excellent performance of our girls and ladies in school. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And Your Excellency, President Kagame, I would love to give you the last word. What can you leave us with today?
Well, I will say there is a lot of learning to do, and there's a lot to learn from, so let's keep learning all together. Second, we must do things that we can do, and we know that will bring the change. Therefore, learn, do, change, and measure, so that we are able to tell where we have come from and where we are at the present, and where we could be going forward in the future. And just the last thought is that, like today, we are having this gender summit, or the number of days for activism for that. I think we must give a good and real meaning to the activism. Activism is not just making noise and yes, and being excited. And I think activism is also about management of the expectation, proper management of what is doable, and identify relevant things we ought to do, and get more organized and really be deliberate, and do the things that are even within our means to do, because there is a lot that is within our means to do that we don't do. So I think this is what I can finally say.
Excellent. Thank you. So, learn, do, change, and measure. I think those are wonderful words to leave us all with. Over the next 3 days, this is what we will be doing. And I'm sure that at the end of the 3 days, we will be very excited with what we have mapped out for the road ahead. So please, we have a round of applause for this amazing panel.